Hopefully you can hear by that it does kind of just sound like a kind of indie rock tune, and that's something that's a lot easier to do within Reason because you've got a lot of live drum loops you can download. You can buy a lot of Rex loops that are pre-made. It's got a lot of good guitar samples in there, so that was kind of maybe a day's work just to get that sounding like the hook of a fairly deep, something like a Scouting for Girls kind of sound, and then with that, once that was done, export that out, and it was time to hand it over to Mark to whack that as one sample into Logic, kind of like we just, because we can work on it now as though it was a bootleg. We take it, it's a sample, we made it, but it just sounds like it's a sample of another track, and then Mark's going to turn it into something a little bit different with us.
So after that has happened, Andy now send me over the file through a USB stick. I put it onto my computer, flip over the screens. So I'm now running Logic on my Macintosh, which is spaced over here, alongside an Access Virus TI Polar, which I use mainly, which is one of the best bits of equipment that I've purchased. Which is then linked into the big screen tool, which we all share.
Which brings us on to the most important, well, one of the most important tools in our studio is this little bit of cable piping, which is the pointy stick. So if anyone needs to, so I'm going to need to move that from there, that to there. This is the most useful thing, and of course if Mark gets something wrong, it doubles up as a decent...
If I get delusions of grandeur, I get a smack across the back of my head. So basically, I then import the loop into the file that we have here. But then try and, which the loops basically over here, which looks as a full audio file. You just bring it up, open it up by double clicking, and you can zoom in and out with the zoom button over there. That looks like a fairly basic audio file. There's no compression really on it. You just see a lot of spikes, which means that I can do a lot with it. We'll then sit and try and produce a track around that in a bootleg style. So it's different, but you still want to keep some of the same elements. So you'll use bits of the vocals, slight bits of guitars, try and keep like a rocky theme to the dance track. Obviously, the first thing that most people do when they produce a track is start off with a kick drum. I do exactly the same. Except on most of my stuff, I try and actually produce and make a kick drum rather than sampling it, because I find it gives you a little bit more specification to be able to move stuff around, change like decays, sustain and stuff to try and give it a little bit more pop or a little bit more depth.
This goes back to what we were talking about earlier on, where it can, you can either spend 2 minutes making a kick drum, or you can spend 2 hours doing it. Neither way is right or wrong. It's just you've got to work. You've got to find your own way of doing things.
That's true. That's definitely true. I mean, sometimes I will sample kicks and put them over top of kicks that I made. I might make a bit more sub on the bottom of the kick. So basically, we as we played the sample before, it was quite a rocky sample. So we decided that we were going to lead up to the first breakdown to bring in the sample. We we're going to do it as a kind of breaksy kind of feel, to give it a bit more of a live drummer kind of aspect. So we keyed in a kind of breakbeat kind of pattern, which isn't a straight 4/4. I'll solo that for you so you can have a little listen. Get some volumes on. Which isn't a true straight 4/4 beat, which lends itself to a little bit more to a rock style, like the drummers playing their drum kit. Now I use a thing called the Ultra Beat synth, which is a synth that comes with Logic. I'm running Logic 7 here, and in the presets that it opens up with, it's the bottom kick drum. It's called Kick 1. You then open the piano roll and put the kicks in like I showed before. And now this lends itself really well to adjusting kick drums. You can actually change the key of your kick drum with the pitch up there, which helps a lot getting stuff to sound tight with your bass line. Because I find if you sample a kick and you're using making a track in a different key, and your kick drum's not in key, you try and pitch it, it'll sometimes sound a lot different, so I like to be able to control it quite manually through here. Right, now I've got, I found the kick on my keyboard. I can then elongate the tail on the kick drum so it's quite long. I can shorten it right down so it becomes a lot more poppy. It just means I've got a lot of versatility with what I'm doing. It means you can make it fit with your bass line and sound a lot more bassy. After that, we then went in to get a snare pattern that would follow the breakbeat kick drum to give it a bit more snap. Then again, it's not a very straight snare drum. It's got a bit more rhythmical feel, like someone's playing the drums, with quite a simple pattern. Quite a simple breakbeat kind of snare pattern, just giving it a little bit of rhythm. Now that incorporates with a kick drum and now a hi-hat to give it a little bit more feel. This incorporates with a snare drum and the kick to give it a bit more feel. And that's your basic rhythm to start the track off with. You don't want something too convoluted. You can different styles of tracks. You start off with different things, but for what we were doing in a bootleg kind of feel, we thought that having something quite simple was a good way to start off with.
I think the next thing we did was try to bring some of the guitar parts, because obviously we showed you before, we made the kind of melodic and the orchestral and the guitar parts out in Reason. We also exported all the different guitar parts out as well, so we've got all little samples, and then it was a case of chopping some of those in and out as well.
We put little bits of samples into the track to try and make it feel like the track wasn't just going to completely drop and be something completely different. You got to ease it into the track. So we had elements of the guitar coming into the tune after slight bits of breakbeats and little drops. Now that's basically incorporating part of the guitar sample from previously that we've brought over from Reason, that Andy and Nick had written over there.
And then you whacked in a bit of bass, haven't you? So do you want to go through what you used?
Yeah. Well, basically, put the guitar sample in as audio because we're trying to do it a little bit like that. I've then put it on a channel on its own and an audio thing, but I've sidechained it to something that Andy was talking about before, was sidechain, and you do it a little bit different in Logic, but pretty much the same way around. You put a kick drum in, mute the kick drum, and then sidechain it through one of the compressors that come within Logic. You click the sidechain on to whatever audio track you put your kick drum in, and then you can alter the sidechain with a threshold and ratio. It's quite a basic bit of production technique, but it's really, really handy. So I've sidechained the kick drum, put a slight bit of EQ on it just to brighten it up, pull it out of a few frequencies around the kick, dropped a little bass off the bottom of it, and just pushed it around 2K, the magic 2K frequency.
Which Mark reckons gives you
I don't reckon that. Jez from the Utah Saints claims that 2K frequency releases endorphins in the brain, which I'm not sure about, but I'm going to go. I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt, definitely. We've also brought in parts of bass samples, which are being played in off the Virus keyboard, which is over here. Some presets that we've created over there, and then created a pattern in Logic itself. So I'll show you those. So this is the first noise over here, which if I press this, it'll should. If I press this, it should play you the noise. It's basically a bass that I've created on the Virus, which the Virus Tripolar comes up with a lovely little softboard synth, which is actually controlling the Virus over there. It's not actual software synth, it's just a way of controlling it quite easily. So we've used like different oscillators, filters, filter envelope, pretty much like a normal synth that you'd find in something like Reason or Logic or Cubase. It's got everything that you would use, but it just gives that little bit of hardware feel to the track. So you have to write MIDI information in there, and it comes through on one of two buses. It'll either come through on the channel or set to an auxiliary. So we've got that bass line. We've then got another couple of bass lines coming in just to try and play off each other to show that it's not just going to be a dancey track.